Yes, it is another edition of Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub. Of course, round 21 is upon us. I tell you what, finals is not far away and there is just a little touch of spring in the air. Beautiful day today. Looking forward to it as always, chatting to the boys. Next to me, Dale Thomas, Damien Barrett, Wayne Carey. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good afternoon to you, Joseph. You've gone a bit early on the timing there, but...
we go to air at 6 o'clock. I was trying to do it for the radio show.
I like it. Your craft is unbelievable. Look, great to be here. Duck, again. Damo, very professional. Duck, training mode, serious. I'm loving
Shorts on too today, Duck.
I've said this a few times. I tricked a lot of people over my career, Joey.
Yeah.
And that's this time of year, I'd be in the gym, I'd be pumping the iron, I'd be watching the diet even more so. And everyone thought, look at Duck getting ready for the finals. Getting ready for the after footy season. That's
getting ready for your holiday.
And I'm also having, if you remember, Joey, I'm having an ab off with Jay-Z.
You are.
At the end of September.
Yes.
So before, whether it be grand final day or the day before or whatever it is, but there's an ab off. I do pick my mark very well.
That's, I know, low-hanging fruit. So you're in training
mode.
with
Nick
Revolt,
Duck? I'll tell you what I'm on. Now, everyone, we know Billy's on whatever shakes he's on, but I'm on the Mosh have brought out a shake. Oh. So I'm on the Mosh shakes.
That's what it is.
So you know what else we'll do? We'll find out who shakes work better. The Mosh shakes or the ones Billy's on.
Eh?
And by the way, they want to give you some. I'm not being rude, but
no, I'll take some. I'll take some.
If you want to get on some.
I need to wait till the weather warms up to start training, so I will get into it.
Get on them.
It was this time last year you said you had about 10 good summers left in you.
Yep.
Does that mean you got 9 left now?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why you got to make the most of it. And I know you're doing your marathon.
Yeah, I'm ready for a marathon. I've got a pilot helping me, Duck. So maybe we just continue and we can just really give the people out there a good indication of whose product's best.
Absolutely.
How's a pilot helping you run?
No, the pilot of the company, not an actual pilot.
A pilot
yeah.
of the right.
Yeah.
And normally we do this. There's always someone in a rush, so we have to try and whip through it. Normally Duck's got business meetings, or Damo's the only one that actually works here, that has some work to do. But today it's you, Daisy. You're the one in a rush trying to get us out of here. What have you got on?
No, just a little business venture. I'll be going over to Adelaide for this afternoon. Just
Through
something.
the books, this one? Dave?
Yeah, all above board this, Damo. Don't worry, we're not all dodgy like you doing cashies before.
I don't do cashies. Maybe the guy next to me does.
Please.
The meeting spot, Joplin's?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very good. Hey, there's plenty going on. We've got some news, Damo, which you'll get into. We'll have a look at round 21. Finals starting to take shape. Are you more clear, Duck, on who the real contenders are for the flag, or you still think it's wide open?
Well, I think it was wider open, I reckon, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Now it's narrowing again now, but a couple have jumped up. So I think Sydney obviously have jumped up. Brisbane are waning, pardon the pun. It's weird. I still think there's a lot to play out. With 3 rounds to go, I still don't think it's set, and we still don't know exactly who is a contender and who isn't.
Very interesting stuff. I've been doing the old ladder predictor on the AFL app and the ramifications of win-losses. Obviously, the Blues have a very tough draw coming home. I've got them at the moment, if they lose like we expect them to Brisbane and Melbourne, and then it'll come down to them beating the Pies in the last round to secure 8th spot.
To get in.
To
stay in.
To make it.
To stay in.
To make it and stay in.
Boy, oh boy. Oh, well, we'll chat about that. We'll chat about round 21. Plenty to play at. As I said, Damo, you've got some news after this. Daisy, you said retirement season last week. There's been a couple of big announcements. I believe you've also got a bit of a whisper. Maybe there might be some more retirements. We'll get to all that later on. But up next, it's Damo's news. This is Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub. Midweek Rub. Damo, time for your news. We mentioned retirement season off the first break, and one of the superstars of the game and maybe one of the West Coast Eagles' greatest ever players, Josh Kennedy, called it quits and will play his final game this weekend.
Yeah, 292 games to the name at the moment, 715 goals. It is an all-time great career in that regard. 23 or 24 on the all-time goal-kicking list. And there's 3 eras of success with the Eagles. Obviously, the early 90s and then the 2005, 2006 grand final period. And then obviously the premiership era that he played in himself, Josh Kennedy, the 2018 one. So it's hard to line them up over the history of the game. And I just simply refuse to. I'll leave that for others to do. But in terms of his own impact in his own era, and certainly in impact for his own team, it's as up there as any player in the time he's been in the game. For the 15 years he's played as an Eagle and for the 2 years prior as a Blue.
Premiership player, forward craft, really, really smart footballer. Knew how to, because he wasn't overly quick, didn't have a leap like Jack Riewoldt, doesn't use his body like Tom Hawkins, but had a bit of all of that. But his footy smarts, knowing how to get that little bit of separation on his defender, and he had really good hands. and in the end became a very, very reliable kick. He's a star, you're right.
3-time All-Australian, 2-time vice-captain of the All-Australian team. Vice-captain, does that sit all right with you if you're a vice-captain of the... Like, I know you only rate if you're a captain.
I think I was captain 4 times, vice twice.
So is vice-captain okay?
It's pretty high up there.
Unbelievable. The skills that you're talking about, the skill set, Duck, his timing to the lead of the ball carrier, unbelievable. As someone who would have had the footy, would have loved to have seen, because every time the West Coast Eagles mids looked up, he was the one who'd already orchestrated a little bit of separation, coming full-chested at them. Unbelievable. And obviously the discussion is who got the best out of the trade, which of course was he to West Coast, Carlton then getting Judd in return. It's a pretty decent discussion, but arguably
I think West Coast.
West Coast.
The premiership.
Yeah, because as good as Juddy was, Juddy's been a champion at 2 clubs. He was a champion at Carlton as well. But the fact that he got a premiership, that tips him over the edge as being got the better part of the trade.
There's a Brownlow attached to Judd's time at Carlton.
I said that. I said he's a champion at both clubs, but one got a premiership, the other didn't.
Yep.
The 7.5 years that Judd played 2 against the 15. And I know he's
that's
trained
why he
off.
wins as well.
Yeah.
Stacks up.
Yeah.
And I think for me, what stands out with Josh Kenny, you think about his effort, his work rate as a key forward. Like even what he did without the footy, his tackling, he pressured as well as any key position player, I think, in the modern era without the footy. So he always stood out. Even when they were playing poorly, he was always one that was kicking goals and giving great effort.
And one more example of how the game has changed in that he couldn't have done much more by way of kicking goals, but he's going to end up with, and I say only in inverted commas, 715. Just line that up with, the guys who, including one this year, who got to 1,000 and won't ever be seen again. And the fact he's going to fall 280 plus short of 1,000 just goes to show how tough that task was to do.
Speaking of all-time greats, Richmond, we know that Dusty's not playing, but now Dylan Grimes with that hamstring injury. What's the latest on those two, Damo? Can the Tigers fans expect to see them back?
Not in the home and away season, almost certainly. Now, there's still some hope that Dusty might get back for round 23. I don't think so, Duck. I think you've got similar information, but either way, I think the only way we're going to see them again, Joey, is if they make the finals, they have that break. And I still think there's some significant doubt over Grimes being seen again anyway, given the serious nature of this latest hamstring problem.
Duck, if Richmond make the finals and Dusty doesn't play round 23, but then he has the bye, the extra week, can he have any sort of significant impact in the finals coming off the preparation he's had? Or is that too big of an ask?
You'd want to make sure... Put it this way, if he's put a line through himself now and he's not doing the required training, then you'd simply say no. But if he keeps the training up while he's having this break, then certainly he's probably one guy that you take the risk with, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Damien Harwick always says it, doesn't he? A 70% fit Dusty is still better than most other players. And maybe with Shea Bolton, the way he's playing,
the improvements
Dusty can
the
stay
key.
inside forward. He doesn't have to be as fit. He can just play inside 50 and let Shea Bolton play a bit more midfield.
It's a big if, though, isn't it?
They're not going to be as reliant on him, though, if he is required, which is a huge plus for Dusty.
Yeah. What about the Blues, Damo? Speaking of injuries, they've got some injury concerns of their own.
Yeah, they
maybe some form issues.
Yeah, form issues, obviously. Only winning 4 of their last 9, and to Daisy's point, needing to win at least 1 to get in, which is strange given they've already got 12 to their name with 3 to go. Nick Newman now has done a knee laceration, which is quite serious, and will keep him out for some time. Matty Kennedy, jaw and concussion, and there's an issue with Corey Durden. Liam Stocker, who would have been a potential replacement, has got a concussion protocol to deal with. Jack Martin is coming back from a calf, and you'd think he'd come back in, but there might still be a requirement for him to play 1 more VFL, and then they've still got some issues around George Hewitt. It's just all happening at the wrong time again for Carlton. They've managed to manage their injuries pretty well, but right now they're struggling as much as at any stage of just en masse numbers being unavailable.
It's concerning. 8-2 to start the year, absolutely flying. Haven't had back-to-back wins since then. It's just the form line and everything we're seeing from them just isn't there at the moment like it was in the first 10 rounds of footy. The loss on the weekend to the Crows was indicative of that. Just couldn't find it. At the start of the year, they were challenged and they looked like they'd turned a leaf in some regards of they'd get themselves back into the arm wrestle and then be good enough to go on with it. On the weekend, it was there for long enough and then it just fell away. And once it started to fall away, it fell away pretty quickly.
Biggest game of Patrick Cripps' career this weekend, as it is Sam Walsh. He has to stop being an accumulator and become a match winner like he was last year. So I think get more of the ball centre forward. So biggest game of some of these Carlton players' careers this weekend. It is massive for these Carlton boys.
Just to re-establish what they'd set up.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
To guarantee themselves a spot in the finals. This is huge.
Yeah. And lastly, Damo, and the big news to come out in the last 24 hours has been Eddie Betts revealing a bit more about what went on at that Crows training camp. What can you give us?
Yeah, well, for those who haven't caught up with it, Joey, and even as we speak, the story will move, and I think it's got another phase of life in it as a significant and serious and problematic AFL story. But the release of Eddie Betts' book, where in 2 chapters he's referred to what happened in that camp. Now, we know in 2017 the club was trying to better itself and started the process of bringing in outside people to assist in that manner. That started the power stance, as we learned in Eddie's book, the training of facial expressions, even to run through a banner. You then lose that grand final, as they did, to Richmond in that season, and the camp in the Gold Coast in the next off-season. It's just horrendous. It's been reported quite widely in the 4.5 years since, but we've now got, for the first time significantly, someone on record saying what happened there. And look, people can make their own judgments on it. The takeout that I want to get the opinions of all you three, particularly because you've played the game, but the exchange of information in a private counselling session, that information being relayed in a group situation against Eddie in front of his teammates in a way that he didn't expect, that's the most serious aspect of this. And while you can use a lot of words on this, I feel it's just a sad outcome to what Eddie's now been forced to endure as a result of this camp.
An amazing and disgusting misuse of trust and power by the Adelaide Football Club. There's no other way to put it, to put a spin on it, that you're going to give up information that's going to be used to better yourself, and we're going to use that at the right time, not to use it to belittle you, to just strip you down of everything you stand for. And, you know, some of the stuff that Eddie speaks about, and it's come out in the book, obviously, talking about that he would be a crap father because he was raised by a single mother, was screamed at him in front of teammates whilst he was doing some exercise trying to get a knife to cut himself free of a rope. The fact that this has been swept under the rug and Adelaide were cleared of not doing anything wrong is mind-blowing. Where the hell are the AFLPA on this? Surely after that camp came out, they were going to their players and saying, right, give us all the information. You don't have to hide under anything anymore. And if this is what come of it and they didn't act, it just blows my mind, because, you know, this has clearly affected one player. And if there's one, there'd be, you know, the rest of the list who would be in the same boat.
Just on the PA, they probably have reached out and probably have spoken to a lot of players privately, but just like what should have been kept private for Eddie, they would like to keep those conversations private with the PA. So I caught up with them during the week, but having just been told about what was in the book before we came on air today, because I haven't read it, but you're right, distrust, that absolutely wrong. And the word, he uses the word weird about some of the things, and to be honest, some of that stuff is weird. That's I think that's the appropriate word for it. I mean, it's mind-baffling, because I was actually one that, because we only got certain information, Joey, about this, I was one that was saying, oh, come on. Well, I think a lot of us, toughen up. It's a camp. We've all had those training camps. Well, this just sounds weird.
Had layers to it.
Weird and
it
wrong.
stunk
and
the whole
like
time,
you said,
though.
the distrust stuff, that is terrible.
Joey, the other aspect too, and only Eddie can relate to this through his own lens, but the Indigenous cultural rituals which were abused, and I'm using that word, he hasn't used that word, but in his eyes, as to how they were used against him or in group sessions in ways that should never, ever be done. And only Eddie can talk to that. And the abuse that was encouraged from player to player across the group room, around in a circle, swear at me, go your hardest. It's not natural for Eddie to want to have that happen. And he said, to your point, Days, what he detected in other Indigenous players on the list at that moment was just heartbreaking. And Jack, we in the media cop it a lot, and I don't get overly defensive. Some people might think I do, but I don't. Sam McClure has driven this story right to the end. A lot of journalists had a good go at it for a long time, but Sam took it right to the end, and he copped it. And Mark Rasciuto, who's the director of the Adelaide Crows, and for some time, has always been very defensive. And again, this morning, even after the book's released, even after it's got another round of airplay, had this to say on his Triple M radio show.
Player welfare is always number one, no matter what's going on. You always want everyone to be happy and all that. So it's very sad that Eddie's written that, and I think the club's been on record at times to say that they acknowledge that it wasn't handled perfectly. It had all good intentions, but it didn't go perfectly. So they've acknowledged that. But so it's sad to say, we all love Eddie, and hopefully Eddie's getting over that. And you know, that was 4 years ago. Certainly the club's moved on from that and looking towards the future, and have made a lot of ground since back then. So
that's an ordinary response. Now, hopefully as the days unfolded, he realises, along with other Adelaide Crows people, in my eyes, hopefully realise that there needs to be something of more substance than that. You know, let's get over it. Hope he's okay. We've moved on. He should move on. That is not where this is at right now. This club needs to, for the first time, acknowledge what it's subjected its players to.
I'm going to
in a way that they haven't yet
I'm going to
done.
beg to differ a little bit there with you, Damo. The thing is that these things have been addressed, and clearly Eddie would have addressed them on a personal basis from when they happened to now. The book comes out now, so it raises it again, and then you say, well, Adelaide have to readdress it again. Now, clearly they've addressed it. There's been an investigation by the AFL and everyone else into it, and they've come out of that. Just because someone writes a book and it comes up again doesn't mean you have to continue to apologise for the rest of your life. So I'll beg to differ there. So what Rue's saying, he probably didn't spit it out as well as he would have liked, but you don't have to keep backing over things just because someone so then another Adelaide Crow brings out a book in 2 years and they have to address it again? You do get my point here.
Not really.
Well, I disagree with you that they have to keep...
In fact, I don't get it at all, Doug. I think the club has wanted this to go away from day one.
So if Eddie's written the book in 2 years' time, don't get me wrong, I'm not condoning what Eddie says, or I'm not disbelieving what Eddie says. But the fact that you say that Adelaide have to keep apologising when someone brings out a book...
I don't think they've sufficiently
That's right.
apologised.
The players weren't satisfied with the response, though. The players have never been satisfied with the response. So that's why it's still an issue.
Well, I would assume that if Eddie wants an apology from Adelaide, and if Adelaide haven't given Eddie an apology, or one that's substantial to Eddie's standard, then that is wrong. Because, the Adelaide Footy Club, if this is how Eddie feels and it's still hurting Eddie, then that's a private...
It is hurting him, and it is how he feels.
That's a private situation that the Adelaide, like Ruth said, that's where the Adelaide Footy Club has to go to Eddie after now reading what's in the book and say, mate, what can we do?
This could have all been done in 2018 and should have been done in 2018.
It feels like that, but it's come out because of a book.
But they've realised they've stuffed up so much that they tried to, at the time, keep it as private as possible and tried to deal with it behind closed doors so that these sort of stories that we're all reacting to now never saw the light of day, because they feared that this would be the reaction of any sane-minded person, that what we're reading into and what was happening. As you said, we've all been put through the ringer on training camps. You've been flogged. You've been made to crawl up sand dunes. You cop that. Yeah, it's a bit different. To be belittled, berated, and to
Daisy,
have
we're
made to do weird stuff. Backing
over what we've already said. We've said that's wrong.
But this is why the Adelaide Crows now need to address it, because it hasn't been in a public forum before. They need to apologise to people in a manner.
Surely they've had private conversations with people.
Well, obviously not, because Eddie's saying that he still feels aggrieved by it.
Doug, Mark Rasciuto was personally attacking any person in the media who dared raise anything even less, like 50% of what Eddie has raised today himself.
When?
Over the 4.5 years.
Sam McClure was
countless audio of Mark Rasciuto picking apart journalists' stories and telling them there's nothing to see here. Now, I'm not saying everything that's been reported is 100% right, but this club has never wanted to get to the bottom of it, in my assessment.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, we could go on.
Good chat.
Good chat. Yeah. We could go on all day, but we'll move on, because up next we're going to take a look at the Daisy Duck Dive Quick 5. This is Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub. Daisy, Duck, I want your opinion. We spoke about the Blues.
I'm just gathering myself. Damo was quite intimidating just before.
You did almost back down a little bit. I saw you take a little back step.
Very intimidating. Well, I wasn't. We're not disagreeing on
we did.
what went on. No, we disagreed that you keep thinking everyone's got to apologise all the time. But anyway, get rid of that. And I felt quite intimidated by Damo. In actual fact, I felt a little threatened.
All right, let's move on. Damo,
would you like an apology?
Actually, no, I'll get one in 4 years.
Hey, first question. We'll speak about the Blues, Daisy, earlier. Some slight concerns about their form. Do you think that they should persist with the big three, with Tom de Koning in the forward line, with Curnow and Mackay pitting it in the ruck? Or what's your view on the Silvani situation? Because they need to make a decision going into finals what their best look is.
I like Jack Silvani in the side regardless, because he has so many options as to where you can play him and how you can play him. He's not the greatest ruckman in terms of tapping the ball, but his follow-up work in the period he was in there was awesome. His effort, his tackling, his ability to keep the ball in and then give these other boys a chance to win it. The three-headed monster up forward, I don't mind. I would love to see Charlie Curnow freed up to get up the ground. Just say you go wherever you want.
Jeremy Cameron-like.
Rely on the fact that you're going to have always one of Mackay or De Koning down deep, so there's a target. Those boys understand that if Charlie's man doesn't go with him and they need to provide a 2v1, that at times you have to put your ego away, just bring the ball to ground. We're going to get there. There's your representation. But trust the fact that at other times, Charlie will be streaming out goal side, providing a completely different look, and that might just be the ace up their sleeve.
I say this often, the fact that they've got the two-pronged attack anyway without De Koning, they can compete and bring the ball to ground, so that's the bare minimum. But when you've got three, you've got to be marking it. So De Koning, because if you're not marking it, that takes away then from your pressure. So if they're not plucking the ball, done, and I'd have Jack Silvani in anyway. I agree with you. I think he's a very good link man, Jack, and I think he's become an 80%. The way he uses the footy, I think he's got footy smarts. So I like him.
He provides a different, if you're going with those three targets. So you got Mackay, who can take a pack mark, Charlie, who's a bit more unorthodox, but Jack is the one that is always coming at the kicker. So yes, he gets bypassed a lot, but as a last resort, if you're under pressure, you look up, he's coming shoulders out at the kicker, whereas De Koning at the minute is still a little bit Saturday night fever, wants it long in the goal square.
Are you saying this predicated on Pitnet not being part of the mix?
I think you still run with Pitnet in the ruck. So then I think the discussion becomes whether you go with De Koning or Silvani.
Right. That is right. So who would you go with if it's
right
only
now?
one?
Silvani.
Only one of the two. Duck?
Oh, like I said, I'd be playing them both. No, I'd be playing De Koning and Silvani.
And Pitnet?
I'd have De Koning as the sub in case Pitnet went down.
I think
Silvani.
De Koning can play. Why couldn't he do what his brother's doing if they got problems down back? I'd be giving him a chance now at maybe something like that, given who they're playing this weekend, because they've got the three-pronger.
Yep.
De Koning v. Eric Hipwood.
No, well, I'll throw him on to seven possession man McStay.
Speaking of their opponents, the Brisbane Lions, Duck, last week you were still a believer that Brisbane could win the flag. You were there at the game against Richmond. Are you still a believer in Brisbane, or is there too many red flags? Daisy, your view as well on the Brisbane Lions.
Well, I tell you what, Joey, I had you excited. We were excited at half time, weren't we? Because they were all firing.
Yep.
So you had Danaher kicking goals, you had Hipwood kicking goals,
Charlie Cameron,
Cameron kicking goals, McCarthy kicking goals. So did McStay? No, I don't think McStay kicked a goal, but you had all the others kicking goals. So if they can do that on any given day, they're capable of beating anyone. Now, they weren't able to sustain it, and Richmond got on top in a number of areas around the ground. But I'm losing confidence by the week. This is a massive game for them as well. We talk about how big it is for Carlton, but it's big for Brisbane.
I couldn't be more concerned at the moment. I thought that they would turn it around, and the factors you've just named, Duck, are the reasons I'm concerned. Their best players played well. Lachie Neale had a stack of it in and around the midfield. Their big boys up forward hit the scoreboard, and they couldn't sustain or hold on to a 42-point lead. Like, that is alarm bells everywhere. And I know we're not allowed to speak about it because Chris Fagan listens to the show and he's getting real pissed off with us mentioning it. But their record at the MCG...
it's got nothing to do with the MCG, their performance on the
last
week.
week.
It's got nothing to do with the MCG.
So they can't defend the ground, so that's got nothing to do with the shape of the ground.
Yeah, they did for a half.
So they can't defend the ground for the entire... So if the grand final goes for a half, we'll back them and we'll tip them to win.
That's a furphy.
That's not a furphy. They got opened up by Melbourne. They got opened
of the
up.
size of the ground. It's because Richmond just
Your
got a
man
hold
going
of them.
down with a serious injury, Zach Bailey didn't help.
You think the
cause,
ground is an issue?
Zach Bailey.
They can't play the ground, Joey. They lose there every time they play. Can they play the Gabba?
Been a shite and housing team for a fair while, other than last few weeks, and they only play a few games there against the good teams.
And they lose comfortably.
Yeah, against the good teams.
Yeah.
That's their home ground.
Hey, I want to ask you two about the high free kick rule. This has got nothing to do with Ginnivan, nothing to do with whether you think he's getting unfair treatment. But in principle, do you like the idea to de-incentivise the player with the ball trying to draw a free kick and let it play on? Or do you still believe that the onus is on the tackler to tackle correctly?
Onus on the tackler for me, simple.
So a player should still have the right to be able to try and draw a free kick.
If it's a really obvious one, I think if they're lowering a really small amount to evade or do whatever, that's been going on forever and a day. Then the onus it has to come back to the tackler for me.
I've got a solution for you, Joey.
Yep.
You have to have both hands on the football to get the free kick. So you see Ginnivan, he pins it under one arm and uses the other arm. If you're good enough to hold it, because then if you slap the arm, you're a chance to dispossess the player and you don't have to follow through with the tackle. Or you can go under their arms and we know that players are good enough. But if you've got both hands on it and you get a high, if you're the one who has it pinned under one arm and you're doing that, play on or holding the ball because there goes your prior. You're trying to use your prior opportunity to draw a free kick rather than dispose
gave
the
you
ball.
That's
I
right
came up with that.
Well
That's
done,
right
I
outside
like
the
it.
box.
I
I
don't
like
mind
it.
it.
That's right from the D. Thomas School of Football.
Well done. Hey, last one while we're talking about selection. Collingwood, if Brodie Grundy's now played one game back in the
use
VFL, if he's fit Brodie Grundy, does Brodie Grundy come into the side for Collingwood straight in?
No.
He's
you don't
injured,
play
isn't
him?
he?
And before you answer that, he's got an issue with his ankle
Yeah,
right
that's
now.
right.
Yeah.
Is he going to play this weekend? Do we know?
I don't believe he will
Okay.
for this reason.
Did he play
Yeah.
limited game time on the weekend?
He played enough, I would have thought, to come in, but I believe he's pulled up sore. And again, this will develop
Yeah,
after we speak. But yeah, enough evidence or reason to go get some scans on a.
Okay, if
lower
Brodie
leg
Grundy
area.
is fit, when he is fit leading into finals,
Yes, you bring him in.
You bring him in.
Yes.
Over who?
Well, he'd come in over Mason,
Mason
Cox.
Cox.
Yeah,
You think
I
he's
agree as well. I was looking for the numbers. They put it up on their website. The Pies, they weren't dominant for a big man going back to the ruck. Even hit-outs and possession rate wasn't probably at the level you'd love to see, but he has missed a big chunk of footy. We are marking him really harshly, but he's still in their best 22.
And just the last one quickly, we've got three teams fighting for 8th spot. Richmond, the Western Bulldogs and St Kilda. Which team is most likely to do the most damage if they get into the finals? Richmond, the Bulldogs, or St Kilda? Damo, you can have your say as well.
I'll go with Richmond. I've just been on that theory all year that if they get there, they'll do some damage. So I've got no reason at this late stage, even though they're the one team that's not in the 8 as we speak, Joey, to change that.
Dogs for me.
Richmond for me.
Richmond, too many injuries now.
The Saints, a distant third.
Fair enough. Hey, up next,
Poor-
we're going to have a
poor
look at
Saints fans.
round 21.
Sorry,
Or
Joey.
a look action. And we'll have a look back at a few of our tips last week because we'd been in a bit of rough form, but I think we bounced back to form last week with our tipping. That's up next on Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub. This is Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub, and we're going to take a look at the round 21 action, but we like to look back at last week. And
Not always.
Well, some weeks we do, and we're going to take a look back. First of all, the Collingwood Port Adelaide game, Jill, because some of us were very confident the Pies would win.
I'm going to give Collingwood fans and do them a favour. I'm tipping Port. Because every time I've tipped against Collingwood, they've won. So I'm going to go with Port Adelaide.
I reckon Port's got one last hurrah in it, and I reckon it's this week.
I'm with
So
you.
Port.
I think Port Adelaide. If Port Adelaide had played anyone else except Geelong on Saturday night, they probably would have won. They played really good footy. They just came up against the Cats. Something that's got to give for the Collingwood Army. They can't do it again, surely. Actually, I'll tip Collingwood. I think. Go the Pies. Thank you. See, I did tip the Pies.
I got you back
you
on
did
board.
turn me back. I knew the Pies would
Count the
win.
Pies.
Well, in a backhanded way, so did I.
Yes, we all did. Hey,
No, I
Daisy,
didn't.
you and I were quite strong that this was a statement game for Melbourne against Fremantle Friday night.
I'll be tipping the D's. I think this is their statement game where they try and steady the ship and get it going against, again, really good opposition.
Feels like the D's have done that little circle up meeting on Monday where they've looked each other in the eye and said, right, time to flex our muscles. Let's get ruthless. Let's get nasty again. So they certainly did that, the D's. And then the Oracle was back with Richmond v Brisbane. I don't like taking results into calculation. I think Richmond's form in football has been very, very good. I think Richmond at the MCG get the job done.
Okay.
Oh, that was me. Sorry, Daisy. I was the only one to tip Richmond. You three
I
all
tipped
tipped
Brisbane at
By
half time.
the way, you were right by a kick and you make it out you're a
Hey,
genius.
all over it.
And
Hey,
in the
let's-
next breath, he said, I wouldn't be surprised if Brisbane win.
Hey, that way it's smart. If you do
Yeah,
the
I
radio
like
craft, Jill can cut it up.
I like
and we
it.
can have an answer either way. So let's have a look at this weekend's games. Couple of beauties. Friday night, Melbourne v Collingwood. Phew. Can the Pies keep doing it, Duck?
The bubble to burst.
The bubble to burst this week.
Yep.
Has to burst at some stage, I think.
Well, you'd have to. You can't keep winning games by less than a kick.
It's
Don't
a
tell
good
Pies
bubble.
fans that. They get upset.
I know. And by the way, the Pies fans will be happy I'm tipping Melbourne.
Yep.
I'm taking Daze's view last week that was Melbourne's statement game, which they then made the statement in, so they're back. So Melbourne.
Yeah, unfortunately for Pies fans, I think it'll be a good game, but I will be tipping the D's, although I could see the Pies winning, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a draw. Was that enough pause in between, Jill, so you can cut that up? Good stuff.
And I keep copping criticism for underestimating Collingwood and not tipping them, so I think the Pies will win.
Oh, do you?
Do you actually, or is that just you trying to please the people?
I think the Pies will win. What about the Western Bulldogs v Fremantle game at Marvel Stadium Saturday twilight. Another huge one for the Dogs. It's probably their season on the line. Top 8 spot. Fremantle trying to find a bit of form again.
Well, it's their top 4 chance on
it is.
the line at the very least. So I want to go for the Dogs in that one, though.
It won't be raining, which is good for Freo.
That's right.
Jeez.
They struggle in the rain.
They
I want the roof
crap.
open.
Yeah.
Dogs for me.
I'll be tipping Freo. The Dogs have been awesome at Marvel this year. Got some serious scalps, Melbourne, Sydney, Pies, St Kilda as well. But I will be tipping Freo purely for the fact that they're a good footy side. They need to get something going coming into finals, or they could quickly become also runs as well.
Yeah, I think Fremantle win this as well. They're defensively much stronger. They're just having trouble. They've gone conservative on offense. I think they've had a chat. Just free it up, play a bit more daring like Collingwood are doing, and Sydney and Geelong. Some of these other teams, take some risks, back yourself in.
What's the intel on why they've got that way?
Well, I think
when the
I
other
think
way got them the surge.
Well, I think they've said publicly they've just gone a bit conservative with the ball. They've just been a bit, not confident enough to just go a bit more. So I think you'll see a bit more of an aggressive Fremantle this weekend. And if they do that, I think defensively they'll hold up and beat the Western Bulldogs. Geelong St Kilda down at GMHBA. Geelong pretty straightforward.
Saints beat them last time.
They did earlier in the year. It was
Yeah.
Paddy Ryder masterclass.
They won't do
in
it
the
this
third
time.
quarter.
I could not see them getting close.
Same.
What about Brisbane Carlton? So we touched on that game. This is massive.
It's massive, this game.
Massive.
Is it
Brisbane
fair
are
to say the loser you don't think can really challenge for a flag if whoever loses this game can't challenge for a
Yeah,
flag?
I'm going to tip the Blues for what it's worth.
I'm tipping the Blues too. I'm tipping the Blues. I think their form is slightly better than Brisbane's.
I'm just not brave enough to tip them. I think they're a live chance. I'm just going to stick with the Lions, though.
I'm going with the Lions purely because it's at the Gabba and they play that ground a lot better than they do the MCG.
And this is one, Daisy. I'm surprised you haven't given us. You haven't given us your
Fags is going to ring me.
your little tip. Do you think West Coast Eagles are not a bad bet this week? Josh Kennedy's last game at home.
I
If you're
like
going to get
them
up for one
regardless.
game.
Yep.
Adelaide, I know it was a great win against Carlton, but Adelaide.
I've done it twice this year where I've tipped them with confidence, and
Yeah.
they've let me down.
Will you
So
do it this
never
week?
again. No.
You won't tip West Coast?
No.
I think West Coast will win at home for Josh Kennedy's final game.
Yeah,
Very confident.
I'd tip West Coast too.
I was tipping them before. I knew it was the big game, and now I'm more so inclined. There'll be that emotional response. They'll pack the joint out. It'll be the 23rd man in the stand. It'll be awesome. I can't wait
Could
for
the
it.
kerfuffle around Adelaide this week, could that sort of disrupt them a little bit? How many players, by the way, are still on the list or in that team?
There'd be a few.
There'd be still a few, wouldn't there?
Yeah. There would be more than half a dozen without even scratching the surface.
Who knows? But I think for all those reasons that you said, West
West
Coast.
Coast.
I hope
well.
the West Coast Eagles do it because Joey Kennedy, regardless of the result, is a champion, but he deserves a proper send-off over there. Pack the joint out, go berserk, and then cheer him off. And we know, Joey, that he will enjoy a few suds afterwards. That's why we love him.
Well summed up, Daisy. Hey, we'll need to get a move on. You've got to get to the airport.
I
This
do.
has been Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub, exclusive on the Listener app. You can listen to every game across the weekend on Triple M and the Listener, starting with this Friday night's clash between Melbourne and the Pies with Das, Howie, Brownie, Damo and the Chief for the Friday Huddle. Thanks for listening to this week's edition of Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub.